really difficult. It's just they're different, you know. So or at least the tech approaches. So the directions, I'll go back to page 19 for a sec here. Solve each equation by clearing away the fractions. All right. So it's telling us a specific technique that we need to use in order to solve the equations. All right. So if we're clearing away fractions, what we need to do is multiply by a common denominator. So multiply each term by the least common denominator. Well, really, any common denominator will do the trick, but ideally it would be the least common denominator. All right? So you could figure this out based off prior knowledge. I mean, ideally you'd look at this and say, okay, common denominator is 15. All right? The least common denominator would be the smallest value, if you remember, smallest value that can be divided by each of the denominators. All right, so that's great, but what if you don't remember that? Or if you do remember that, you just can't figure it out, you need something else to fall back on. So that's where technology comes into play. All right, so in Desmos, there is a function under functions. You tap on functions, and then miscellaneous. So in Desmos, you tap on functions, then miscellaneous, and you'll see an option for LCM. All right, LCM. Least common multiple. All right, means the same general idea as least common denominator, except it doesn't force the number to be a denominator of a fraction. It's saying, okay, if you have two numbers and you want to find the lowest multiple of those two numbers, then we'll tell you what that is. And then you say, well, I want it to be a denominator of a fraction. And the calculator's like, cool, use this for that, and you're fine. All right? Because the least common multiple can apply in more situations than just fractions. All right? So it has that flexibility. So I have three denominators, but only two of them are unique. I don't care about repeats. All right? So we're going to find the LCM of 5, 3. All right? So LCM 5, 3, it spits out the 15 for you. All right? So maybe you don't need this function for this particular problem. I mentioned this yesterday. You don't need the technology for this particular problem, but I promise you down the line, there will come a time where you're like, oh, you know, what was that function again? Because I'm looking at these two numbers and I just can't figure out the LCD or LCM. It's just not clicking. You know the concept, you know the idea, you know you're supposed to be able to get it, you're just not seeing it. The technology is there for you. All right. The TI calculator will also do it for you. You just got to kind of hunt around for it. All right. So if you're using a TI calculator, so in the TI-84, you'd hit the, I'll show you in a second, but I'm just write out the steps first. Math, NUM, option 8. It'll also bring up LCM, and you'll just do the same thing from there. So let me get my calculator. Math, see the NUM heading here? You just hit the right arrow to get there. Scroll down. You'll see option 8, or you can just hit the number 8. You scroll down to 8 and hit enter, or just hit the number 8. I'll hit the number 8. It brings up the same command, and you do the same thing. Type in 5, 3. All right, the comma key is right here. All right, so 5, 3 gives you the LCM. All right, so that's pretty nice. All right, again, those are for situations where you say, I know I should be able to do it, I'm just not seeing it. At least you have the option using technology. All right, so -2 fifths equals -1/3 x plus 3/5 is going to get multiplied. Each term is going to get multiplied by 15. All right. If you're not sure about the result of a computation, put it in the calculator. Put it in Desmos. Put it in the TI calculator. 15, for example, times negative 2/5. Just type it right in and it'll tell you. But you could also cancel, because the idea is that all the denominators should cancel away. So that 5 here should cancel away, and it will, because 5 divides into 15 evenly 3 times. 3 divides into 15 evenly 5 times. And again, 5 divides into 15 evenly 3 times. All right. So then you just multiply whatever remains. We got a 3 times a negative 2. The calculator said negative 6, and so do we, so we're good there. You have a 5 and a negative 1x. All right, I'll highlight the x too. So negative 5x. And then plus is still there, 3 times 3, 9. Now we're dealing with an expression that's in a linear form. All right, it's all one line. Solve that the way we did yesterday, with the benefit of saying, oh, I don't have to worry about that Po nonsense. The properties of equality, I don't have to write that. Right? The directions didn't tell us to, so I'm not concerned with that. So I'm just going to do it the old-fashioned way. I'm going to subtract a 9. So we have negative 15 is equal to negative 5x. I'm going to divide by the negative 5. Boom, shaka, laka. All right, so we get x equals 3, or 3 equals x means the same thing. All right. Now, just a refresher. I know we're not all on board with the tech yet. At some point, I promise you, you might not believe me, but at some point you will be, because you just don't know. You just don't know yet what the equations will look like down the line. All right. I mean, I could write a nasty-looking equation up on the board for you and show you, oh, this is a crazy-looking equation, but you'll look at it and say, well, how do I know that's difficult? Maybe it's easy. You're just making it look hard, you know. But I mean, if I were to say something like x 1/3 x to the 3rd plus 5x squared equals 7. All right, that's a pretty complicated equation. Like I can tell you, you just have to believe me now that this is not an easy one to solve. All right, and I didn't put anything funky in there like some of these crazy symbols that you see on a TI calculator, like the sin, the cos, and the tan, or sine, cosine, and tangent is what it really means. I didn't put anything like crazy in there. All I did was threw some powers on there, and I can tell you that this equation is not an easy one to solve. All right, you will be able to solve an equation like this before your experiences in math are over, but it's not easy. All right, but I can tell you that Desmos will not have any more trouble solving this equation than it does have solving this equation. Same level of difficulty for the technology. All right, for us, completely different end of the spectrum. Really easy, really hard. For Desmos, both really easy. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're keeping an open mind to the technology. You could say, I'm not going to worry about it now. I'll worry about it when the moment comes. I respect that. But please, when the moment comes, don't have so much pride that you can't ask the question and say, I didn't think it mattered, but now it does matter. Please, can you tell me how to do this? Because I realize what you're saying now. All right, I'm not gonna pass any judgment. All right. So again, on Desmos, the left side goes in as one equation, so we'd say y equals negative 2/5. The right side goes in as another equation, so y equals negative 1/3 x plus 3/5. And we're just seeing where they cross. So y equals negative 2/5. Y equals negative 1/3 x plus 3/5. All right. The only thing you got to make sure, just quick double check that you typed it in correctly. All right, that's not too bad. I mean also that I rewrote it correctly. All right, looks good. I'm looking for an intersection. Scroll around, pinch zoom, whatever it takes. Tap on the intersection, a gray dot will appear. Tap on that gray dot, a coordinate will appear. All I care about is the x value. And you see that the x value is equal to 3, just like we got algebraically. All right. And again, I'm going to say this repeatedly. If a question says on a test or on the Regents exam that you have to do it algebraically, you got to do all this stuff. All right? All of this stuff where you're solving the equation by hand. If it's a multiple choice question, you could use technology. On my tests, you can use Desmos. On the Regents, we'll have to switch over to the TI calculator. So I wanted to take 2 minutes, more like 5 minutes, and show you how to do this on the TI calculator also. It's not much different in terms of concept. It's just a lot of different keystrokes. All right, so you can follow along, but this is getting recorded, so you could also just watch. It's up to you. All right, so if you do this on the TI, so the TI-84, what you're doing is you're putting the equations in, the same equations that we just came up with to put in Desmos. We're putting that in the TI calculator, just we're going to do it a little differently. All right, so we're going to hit the y equals key. Right there you see y equals. You hit that key. I have some stuff in there from last period, so let me get rid of that. Just clear to wipe out a row. I have y equals -2/5. So what I'll type in, because it's y1, the subscripts just distinguish the equations from one another. The subscript of 1 means that this is my first y equation. The 2 means my second y equation. That's all it means. All right. So I'm going to type in -2/5, and y2 will be -1/3 x plus 3/5. All right. So I got to type that in. The fraction tool on the TI calculator, I find it to be very annoying because it's not in an obvious location. In order to put a fraction in the TI, you'd have to hit alpha y equals. So alpha y equals option 1. All right, so to put a fraction, I'll just kind of jot this here. To put a fraction in TI-84, hit alpha y equals and then option 1. All right, so those are your keystrokes. All right. I kind of get annoyed at little things like that because, and I would imagine most people do, because I look at this comma key, which we're going to use some, but not as much as we're going to use a fraction. And it's like, you have a dedicated key for a comma, but you couldn't figure out a way to have a dedicated key for a fraction. That's just aggravating. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. So select that. You type in your -2/5. So negative, not minus, but -2/5. Then hit enter. So right arrow to get out of the fraction, then enter to lock it in. Then alpha y equals n over d, -1, down arrow to get to the denominator, 3, right arrow. Now to bring up an x, this key right here, the x with the t, with the theta, with the n, those other keys don't matter. I mean, sorry, the other characters. That one key does matter. The x is the only relevant value on that key because depending on the mode that the calculator is in, it would bring up those other characters, but we're never going to change the mode. So every time you hit this key, the x will appear. All right. For now, that's all you really need to know. All right. So plus alpha y equals n over d, and then you type in the 3/5. Like I said, for simple equations, you're looking at this being like, this is more trouble than it's worth, and I understand. I would be thinking the same thing. Right? So I want to create the graph. So there's 2 ways to create a graph. One way would be to hit the graph key, which you would think is the obvious way to go, but that's dependent on the window from the previous problem. So if somebody had like a crazy window that went from like -500 to 1,000 or something like that, then you could be at the mercy of that. I recommend hitting zoom option 6, that's standard zoom. All right, so to graph, hit zoom 6. All right, so zoom followed by the number 6, or scroll down to the 6 and hit enter, and it'll create the graph. Now it's hard to see, but there is a horizontal line here in addition to the x-axis. It just doesn't appear that way, but the thickness of the x-axis kind of gives it away. Negative 2/5 is really close to the x-axis, so it should actually be there. So there is an intersection right at this location. So to find the intersection, you're going to hit second trace 5, and then enter 3 times. All right. I didn't intend for this to become like an incentive to learn Desmos because this is so complicated, but it's kind of seeming that way. Unfortunately, we want to become proficient with both types of technology, so it's not like you have a choice in the long run. You got to do both. So second trace option 5 says intersect, then just hit enter, 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 and you'll see the x value comes up as a 3. And just going back to what I said before, for an easy equation, probably not doing it this way. For a really complicated one, you're almost certainly going to do it this way. All right. So I'll just do the algebraic solution for number 6. I'll just get you through that somewhat quickly, because it's the LCM part of it that people are really probably more interested in. So we have a 5, a 9, and a 15 here. So we have 3 values for which we need to determine the LCM. All right, so the way we handle that using technology, and we'll stick with Desmos for now. So the way we handle that using technology is by selecting LCM, so function, miscellaneous, LCM, and working 2 terms at a time. So LCM 5, 9, which gives you 45, and then take that result and pair it with the one that you haven't evaluated yet. So LCM 45, 15, and that's only assuming that you didn't recognize that 45 is itself a multiple of 15. All right. If you know the LCM, you don't need the technology. Some people like to use the technology just to verify something that they already know, just for a little extra layer of security. But that's up to you. All right, so this is our multiplier. So I'm going to rewrite my equation. Negative 1/5 minus 4/9 k is equal to 2 over 15. I'm going to multiply each term by 45. Let me zoom it in a sec. All right, 5 goes into 45 9 times. 9 goes into 45 5 times. 15 goes into 45 3 times. All right, it gets to be a little messy, but that's why I use things like highlighters and different colors and all that good stuff. I mean, honestly, it's probably only messy because I have messy handwriting. So if you're organized and have good handwriting, then you should be all right. So negative 9 times negative 1, negative 9. We have this negative 5 here, negative multiplied by the 5 times a 4k. All right, so negative 20k. 3 times 2 is equal to 6. All right. So then we solve it the way we would solve any other kind of linear equation. Add 9. So subtract 20k, you get a 15, divide by the negative 20, and you get negative 15 over 20, but simplify it, you're looking at negative 3/4. All right. Shouldn't be surprised if you get a fraction. So, I mean, you started with fractions, so it's not shocking if you end with fractions. So don't be alarmed with that kind of thing. But yeah, that's really the long and short of it. Right. Again, if you get an answer that's somewhat surprising, then use technology to verify your answer, make sure it makes sense. All right, that's never a bad idea.